Preparing for this input, I really need to research on the internet about practical examples of how endorsement is applied. And I should say that it's not an easy task. Why it's not an easy task? Because the early days when open badges were introduced in 2011-12, actually it was super new development, even on technical level, but also on conceptual level. So obviously back then it wasn't really easy to talk also about external recognition of this innovation. And then certain things what happened with open badges, that the working groups around Badge Alliance formed, and one of them was endorsement group. They laid down some scenarios of possible endorsement implementation within the open badges standard. Just to understand, open badges is a technical standard, so it is an infrastructure, but also it offers a conceptual level how certain things could work to transform education and recognition. So that working group on endorsement laid down some scenarios, which later on they were actually implemented at technical level by adding an extra to the open badges standard called endorsement. So with the open badges standard 2.0, it became possible to embed extra data, extra piece of data to a badge which is related to endorsement. So that's what I will be sharing today. This is something what already is acknowledged by a couple of researchers who wrote an article about the role of endorsement in open badges ecosystem. And they say that actually inside the structure of open badge, endorsement is foreseen and it's intentional. And it allows a variety of different types of endorsers to show that they value certain badge and associate learning outcome to that badge. So technically speaking, it's already possible to implement endorsements on open badges. Here are the levels where endorsement can be implemented. Technically, before the badge is issued, it is a generic badge class, so it gives structure for the data. And already at this level, organizations could ask third parties to endorse specific badge before it's issued. What does it mean technically? It means that agreements made with external organizations, institutions, groups, and networks to acknowledge that the future badges which will be issued, they have value to them. And this is somehow visualized on a offered badge. So when organization gets endorsement on a badge class level, it means that on a badge level, endorsement is visible to future earners and anyone who will be seeing the badge later. So that's one level where endorsement can be technically implemented. Another level, it is on assertions. It's a technical word again. In practice, it means that once earners get a badge, they get their copy of a badge, which means that my badge, which I earn, will differ from a badge which is earned by Katya, even if we are earning the same badge. The difference will be in assertion, which means that it will be unique data about me as earner. And if I apply any evidence, I submit any evidence to a badge, that would be unique piece of badge for me. So technically, the standard foresees that once I earn a badge, I can ask for third-party endorsement. And that's possible. So after the badge is earned, technically speaking, if platforms allow, earners can ask endorsement, acknowledgement that something what I show and use in practice, it's valuable to some third-party organizations. And then another level where endorsement can be issued is at the level of issuer. So organization which is offering badges can request another organization or number of organizations to acknowledge badging process, programs, and then this endorsement is actually scaled to every badge organization is using. Technically can be still put certain restrictions, what is allowed or not by issuer to be used on a platform, and that depends often on the platform, but the technical specification allows to ask for endorsement of my organization as a badge issuer with the agreement when later on I can use that endorsement to be shown on badges I create and badges I issue as organizer of activities. So that's about technical part, but also conceptual level. And I think from your examples of how you want to approach endorsement. In some, you talk about looking for recognition of your organization or your programs you do as organizers of learning. And sometimes you say that you want to achieve a specific badge, let's say internship badge, that would be acknowledged and endorsed by companies which host interns, or by companies who could offer internship in exchange to a badge. So it could be implemented at different levels. And then looking for practices to share, I came across one design principles documentation project, which since 2012 monitored several projects which were funded in US, and they were implementing badges as piloting projects back then. And in 2017, the report came looking at what are best practices in using badges. And one of the sub-chapters of best practices was around external recognition. And then it appeared in the report that seeking external backing up of badges actually makes badges work. So that would be the statement. I will be going into details. What this research project did, they analyzed 30 badge projects funded at the same funding year and stretching throughout 2 years as piloting phase. And what they discovered that 11 of badge systems already at the beginning intended to search and seek for some sort of endorsement of their badge systems by external organizations. So out of 30 projects granted that year funding, 11 already at the beginning said, we want to seek external endorsement from other organizations. However, after analyzing the reality, researchers found out that only 5 of these badge systems could be judged to be reaching certain formalized practice. So that's interesting, and the report provides more in-depth analysis of which projects exactly managed to reach, giving examples of what they did in a way. And only today I will be sharing the conclusions to stimulate your curiosity to read the report later on. So one of the conclusions related to external recognition was that badges work better when external endorsement are based on existing institutional relationships. So projects which were building external recognition on existing institutional relationships, they were succeeding more than the rest. So remembering what we did previously and what you were tasked to do to map endorsers, potential endorsers, prioritizing the ones which are in a close proximity with your relationships already built, maintained, that could be a good chance to succeed in achieving that endorsement. However, many of you in your work, you refer to examples where you would like to reach out to institutions, ministries, national level institutions, which are at a further distance. And I think that's where the struggle begins. We try to reach to institutions with which we yet don't have any institutional relationship. Yeah. Another important conclusion comes from analyzing real projects, that badges work better as informal credentials and not as seen as formal accreditation systems. So something what we often intentionally somehow seek is to use badges for formal accreditation or formal certification system, because we know these systems exist. Let's take universities, colleges, usually they would have a system to somehow acknowledge, recognize informal, non-formal learning of futures, to give credit to them. They are often very formalized. You need to provide evidence of any learning you undertook, competence, and so on. So when we try to use badges in the same way, very often what the research says, it doesn't work like that. What we need to look into is a different approach to badges. And what the research tells that actually, if badges are seen more as a tool within the network, that may succeed. So it's a more informal tool for recognizing and validating learning, so to speak. And one more conclusion, which is, they say, researchers say it's speculative one, that's why they put badges probably work better when they can be endorsed by multiple stakeholders after they are issued. So it's not yet so bulletproof evidence, but it seems that when earners start showing badges in and using them to access something like internship, jobs, and so on. And then in addition, they have an opportunity to ask for endorsement. That's when badge really gets value and become very important credential. So that's important findings from analyzing several projects. And to continue, I picked up the few examples from nowadays. I looked into Open Badges community email group, where someone in 2018 asked, do you have any good practice examples of endorsement? Since endorsement is possible, we want to know. And two came up, and I looked into them. One, HPass, I already know from several presentations, and this is an interesting development. HPass is intended to help humanitarian organizations, which is a big number of people involved in the world, to validate learning and assess providers who provide humanitarian aid and relief services across the world. It's a big network. It's a huge system. It's a lot of people involved, from local volunteers to professionals, highly trained professionals, and they move a lot in the world. So this initiative tries to map somehow competences necessary for delivering a good humanitarian work, good services, and they use open badges for that. And the way they approach the external recognition, they build a system where organizations can apply for assessment wherever they fit the standards of quality. And through assessment, they are issued endorsement, which later on they can use technically on the platform to then issuing badges. So their badges get a logo, they get a certified issuer label. So there are a few things which are implemented through this HPass to create opportunities for organizations to prove they're having a good quality services, including training and learning opportunities for volunteers, staff members, and associates. And badges are showing this to the rest of the world. That's one example. Another example which came up in this group was Providence After School Alliance. Again, listen, alliance, which means a number of organizations are functioning as alliance, and they managed to achieve recognition of their badge system municipality, which allows young people to be shortlisted and put upper in the list for summer jobs. So if young people then applying for summer job and this municipality offers summer jobs to young people, they can, if they show badge, that means that they are prioritized as candidates to get a placement for summer and do job opportunity throughout the summertime. And later on, we will share, of course, links to these two examples so you can explore more. And that's also another example, practical example, how endorsement is achieved through using badges. And this example, particular one, is through building an alliance of organizations working in after-school programs. From our side, we would like to share with you Cities of Learning, a working in progress example. We were observing for a while what was happening with other parts of using badges. And for example, in several cities, they launched initiatives of Cities of Learning. And we took this as a good practice example and started developing our network of Cities of Learning. And so far, we are more than 20 operating in different parts of Europe, plus in Africa. And on this platform, we seek to build already certain things for a possible external endorsement. So one thing, what we built in is using the skill database from European Skills and Qualifications Framework, which is a database used on national level and put together in one database at European level. And all these skills are part of a national qualification frameworks. So whenever somebody picks up a skill to add to an activity, which later on also is added to a badge, that skill is linked to an occupation or profession or specific skill, which is already in the qualification framework. So that's one thing what we wanted to build in the system. The other thing what we built is the endorsement feature, which we're still experimenting. So in case your organization is using or planning to use Cities of Learning platform, then we could activate this feature for your organization to experiment. The way it works at the moment, you can ask endorsement at the badge class from external organization. Of course, first of all, you need to agree, you need to present the whole thing, and then inform that you will send an email from the platform. So basically, you go to a badge, you go to an endorsement, asking for endorsement, and request this endorsement. When email comes to the contact person you were talking with, you were presenting the badge system and so on, then that person acknowledges the endorsement by also typing in what they will offer practically as opportunity once someone will show up with a badge. So this will become visible on a badge for badge earners. So in this way, the ones who seek to get a badge, they also have an idea what practical opportunity this badge can offer. So now, seeing what you worked on, approaching endorsers, one of the steps to make would be to ask their formal and public endorsement on a badge level through the platform. So that's one of the examples which I'm bringing today. And so far, again, what we discovered, it's not an easy task, but very ambitious task. Even the researchers, the ones which were already speaking about endorsement, they said in their research, it's a very ambitious task to achieve.